Hi class, today we're going to be looking at the final parts of mitosis and meiosis for chapter 8. We are going to first compare mitosis and meiosis and just look at how they compare but also how they are different, how they contrast. So first, if you take a look in your notes packet, you have a place where you can fill this in. Mitosis is one division. There are two daughter cells that are created. They're exact copies of the parent cell. They are diploid to diploid, and the purpose is to grow, repair damaged cells, or in single-celled organisms, asexual reproduction. So they're making an exact copy of themselves for the continuation of the species. In meiosis, to compare them, we have two divisions. There's 4 daughter cells that are created. Each of these daughter cells is very unique in the type of DNA that's there, on the chromosomes that are there. They are diploid to haploid, so we're getting half the number of chromosomes to make sure that when they combine in sexual reproduction, we end up with the correct number of chromosomes in the zygote. The purpose is to make gametes, or sex cells is what they're called, and it will lead to genetic variation, which is very important for species to continue thriving in a changing environment. We'll get to that more in evolution. If you'd like a picture diagram of that, you can pause here and take a look at this, maybe draw it out if that'll help you. Remember, meiosis has 2 steps. They go through meiosis 1 and then meiosis 2. The process of crossing over and independent assortment are important in meiosis, and that allows for variation in those 4 daughter cells. Okay, the last thing that we want to cover is what happens when there's kind of out of control mitosis. So mitosis, we know, is making copies of cells that you need to either repair or maybe you need to grow. But what happens when there's out of control mitosis and we see tumors, or we see a mass of cells that are just continuing to grow? Generally, this can cause cancer. It can also cause just a benign tumor, which isn't actually cancerous, and it will be, some people might call this a cyst, where it's just a mass of cells that are sitting in an area. So basically, with this, the cell cycle is controlled through enzymes, and there's enzymes that tell the cell when to divide and when to stop. If those enzymes are not working properly, or they have been, the DNA has been mutated enough that those enzymes are either not produced or they're not being read correctly by the cell due to some other mutations in the DNA, we may see this cell cycle get out of control. So any malfunction in the system means that cells will divide at inappropriate times and places, and there's 2 possibilities here. You can have a benign tumor, which is essentially normal cells. They stay at the original site. They don't move. A lot of times we might call this a cyst. Sometimes they're removed by doctors, sometimes they're not. Depends on where that tumor is and if it's impeding any normal function for the person. And then cancer cells are uncontrolled cell division that can move, and that process of moving is called metastasize or metastasis. Now, a lot of times the mutations that can occur are caused by environmental causes. So that might be chemicals that you're exposed to in the environment, might be radiation, even ultraviolet radiation, something like that, that has changed the DNA and it hasn't been corrected. Normally your DNA can be corrected, but if it's just too much, or maybe the cell didn't notice it, whatever, the enzymes that are supposed to be there to correct it might not do their job. And then you're going to end up with some type of mutation that can be passed on. Mutations generally build up over time in your body, and so generally people that are older end up with cancer due to the fact that they've had enough mutations over their lifetime that maybe just didn't get repaired, they continue to get copied, and that can eventually lead to cancer. So the problem is not only uncontrolled division, it's the process of metastasis, where the cancer cells move to other sites. And if it moves to other sites, then you end up with a new tumor at that site. So you might have something like breast cancer, but that breast cancer moves to another location through the lymphatic system, and when that happens, you might end up with breast cancer cells on your lungs or in a bone or something like that. And that's when the uncontrolled division gets even worse because it's in other locations. So there's three main treatments: surgery to remove the tumor, radiation, and chemotherapy. And the last two are aimed at controlling the division. Those last two, radiation is a little more specific to the particular tumor. It's basically an injection to that site. It can still cause damage to healthy cells as well. And chemotherapy is a little bit more full body, and it still can cause damage to normal cells. So a lot of times people will lose their hair, possibly most of the time they're often nauseous because it's killing fast-growing cells, and we talked about that in class already, but fast-growing cells are things like stomach lining, hair, skin, things like that that have the cells are replenishing themselves quite often because you're losing those cells, or hair is growing and those kinds of things. So it can damage healthy cells in the process of trying to damage the cancer cells.